Shannon Maer, cover artist for Marvel, DC, Dynamite Comics, and others, and you're listening to Spoiler.
Guys, welcome back to Spoiler Country. And today on the show, we're really excited because if you walked into your local comic book store, you've probably seen his work on Spider-Man and Harley Quinn and King Black and a plethora of others. Shannon Maer, thank you so much for coming on, man. This is a treat.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, man, you're really known for that oil painting style cover art. And you've done some amazing stuff. What got you into painting?
What got me into...
Because I know you kind of, when I looked you up, they classified you as a digital artist. And I know that you do a lot of that, but I also know that you do like doing traditional, and you've mentioned before that you wanted to get more back into doing traditional oil. And so I kind of feel like your digital stuff is mimicking what you probably already naturally do. And
yeah, I spent a long time strictly doing oil painting. So when I was in college, that was my focus. I guess it was primarily, I was looking or directing myself towards book covers in, the oil medium.
Yeah.
And I spent a long time on that. And then I was fascinated with working digitally. And I started, dabbling in that. And I found that I still wanted to be able to, I guess, maintain that style. So it was important to me, whatever medium I was moving into, to not really lose anything. And I guess for as much as right now, it's not like I don't find myself focusing on that. I think it's just maybe, parts of that is coming through naturally. So I've been doing it for a while. I guess ultimately, I'm happy if the work looks, how I want it to look without it having to be a specific way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What called you to oil?
What called me to oil? It would probably be the artists that I was looking at and fascinated with their work, and most of it, if not all of it, was oil paint. Frank Frazetta and Boris Vallejo and the guys that were doing, TSR, Elmore, Easley, guys like that. They were all working in oil, to my understanding, at least. And it was, I guess, for the fantasy art, which was a heavy influence for me.
Yeah,
tended to be very, very, I guess, geared towards oil.
You mentioned Frank Frazetta and Boris Vallejo. They're kind of, I don't know if there's ever any rivals, but they're kind of neck and neck. When you talk about Frank, it's hard not to mention Boris. And when you look at their work and their style, are those the two that influenced you the most, you think, of all the people you mentioned?
Probably. I think it became that. There were artists I was familiar with earlier on, and then I became familiar with Boris Vallejo, and then I think soon after Frank Frazetta.
Yeah.
And there were, they were, I guess if we're going to talk about the two of them, they have a background, doing Conan, and it was Frazetta doing that for some time, and then Boris was doing it, and I guess, and there were, similarities with their styles, but it's also, I don't think it's even fair to just look at it as similar. They were working on, the same storyline, and the book and series, it had its look. And, I think it was reasonable for, Boris then to step in and do the covers in the look that was established. And it was fantastic. And I think on his own, he had a bit of a different take. He was more focused on the specific characters. And, when he liked to talk about it, he talked about, trying to represent the beauty of the human form. And he enjoyed, working with muscular figures and getting all the veins and everything in and stuff like that. So whereas Frazetta had more of a freer, looser fine art style.
Mm-hmm.
So there were takeaways on both ends of that were, distinct on their own that I really appreciated. So I'd say there was times when I like to focus more on, the details. And then other times I was like, I just want to get looser.
I just want to get
more
fluid.
More playful.
That's cool. Yeah. I like your
get a little abstract.
I like your dog.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
What, a boy or a girl?
Boy here. That's his name is Marvel.
Nice.
Yeah. And we have 3 cats and 2 dogs. So there's another dog, Chloe.
Nice.
Right behind me. Yeah. Right.
Well, we're big animal lovers
under
in
my
this
chair.
house. Yeah, we had at one time we were big animal lovers in this house. At one time we had 6 chickens, 3 dogs, and 2 cats. And then then 3 dogs passed away, which was really lame because they all passed away within 6 months of each other. And then now we have 1 dog right now, 2 cats, and we're on the 19th, we're going to get 4 chickens. And then we'll probably end up getting another dog. And then it's kind of animals in our house kind of go hand in hand. My 7-year-old, she wants to be a vet, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, this is all the animals, I guess Becky was a big influence on that.
Yeah.
They're awesome, but it just kept expanding. And if Becky had her way, she'd just have every
goats and horses.
Everything that's out there. Yeah, she's trying.
My mom literally came over and said, "You should get Ella a miniature horse." And I'm like, "Oh my God, just stop talking right now." No miniature horses. We don't have the room.
But it can live in the house.
They are cute. Yeah, right. Wow. It can live in the house. I'm not picking that up though.
Now you're talking.
That's funny. So, it's so funny because you mentioned Frazetta, and I know a lot of people love Frazetta, but like I read his books, the Death Dealer series, which was amazing. And he did all the covers for that. And then his Vampirella. When you're doing something like Vampirella, do you think back of how much what he meant to you when you were kind of going through and paving your own way?
You mean when I'm working on Vampirella?
Yeah, like when you're working on something that is a property that he started. Because I don't know of a lot of stuff that Boris Vallejo has that people are still mimicking, except for that because he's constantly still creating to this day, right? Boris is, but Frank, like Vampirella is an iconic character now, and I'm just curious because I've seen that you've done some Vampirella art. When you're doing it, do you kind of think back on the influence that Frank has on you and like I want to make sure this is exactly how I want it to be?
No. Well, I would say that I don't try to focus on that at all. And I guess, every once in a while it'd be like a reminder, like Vampirella, I'm doing regular now. So I'm doing a cover. So their regular release, I'm doing a cover for that every month. So
awesome.
Yeah, I'm like on my 3rd, 4th cover now in the ongoing series there. And it's kind of cool having the opportunity to do that. It is interesting to look back and be like, Frazetta was doing this at some point. So, they're big shoes, not that I'm specifically trying to fill them, but, they would be. But I don't want to try to mimic anybody's stuff out there. It doesn't mean that they're not an influence. They absolutely are. This is stuff that, I spend a lifetime studying, but I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing, naturally syncs with me and just let the work or whatever wants to come out naturally.
That's awesome. When did the passion of art take you?
Oh, as early as I can remember. I was a little kid and maybe I didn't talk about it very much, but I remember having emotional responses to things that I would see. Like one of my earliest art memories, and I hope I can talk about my brother, but my brother is a couple of years older and we were coloring, coloring books. And I believe it was a Batman and Robin that he was coloring in. And I had an emotional response to the colors that he used. I think it was that something was shaded in green and then it was outlined in a dark blue. Uh-huh. And I was just like, wow, just the response I had to it. I remember that
hit you differently
to this day. And I was probably like 4 years old.
That's incredible. That must have been a really emotional attachment, or like a real emotional connection though. Cause if you're 4 and you're still harking back to that and remember those color sets, that's powerful. That's a crazy thing.
Yeah. I remember watching, was it Sesame Street with the Count and pastel colored blocks.
Yeah.
And, I had a similar response to seeing those colors, and I guess, children they respond to colors, but I don't know that everybody is, like tunes into the show just to see those blocks.
Right.
Like I would, just be waiting the whole time to see them.
Do colors in your life affect you drastically still? Like when you go to places and you see, wow, that setting or that design of those, using those colors in that formation has really hit me a different way?
Oh yeah. I feel that I'm kind of always working. I could be out anywhere and something will catch my interest. And, it could be something like that, a color combination, or patterns, or I guess anything that, you would consider to be a graphic layout, or, something that would catch my attention in that respect. And it's like, oh, okay, note for later. But I guess like I'm always working out there in life, and it's still a study.
Yeah, that's cool though, because it just shows that you just got a lot of passion for what you're doing. That's amazing. What was your parents like when you're growing up and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this? Were they very supportive of of you wanting to be an artist?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't think I ever had any, backlash on that.
Yeah.
Trying to push me down another road. I think I made my own assumptions about that, and it wasn't based on parents. Like when I went to art school, I didn't get any negative response, for wanting to go, and I guess the assumption I was going. But when I was picking a major, mm-hmm. I kind of felt like, well, I should be choosing something that stands a better chance of making a career out of. And I went into graphic design.
Yeah.
And I did that for a year. You didn't have to choose that for the first, I think it was 2 years, or the first year, definitely not. But I moved into, it was second year. And I moved into that. And it was okay. I had more of a passion as an illustrator, and my teachers were even saying that, like, you're approaching all these projects as an illustrator.
Yeah.
And I finally had a teacher, really point that out to me. And I was like, well, I've considered switching. And then over the summer, I had to take some courses to make that up in order to switch over in illustration and go all in. But I felt I chose that, not that my parents were asking, but to make them happy and be like,
right.
I went into, graphic design and I can get a job in corporate America. This is kind of how I viewed it. And, I would still do the illustration and stuff on my own time.
Isn't it interesting how much your parents can have that much of an influence on you without even saying anything?
Yeah. We talked about it later on, and I heard that it was a surprise that I wanted to go into the graphic design. They're like, well, we weren't going to give you any, backlash on that if that's what you want.
Yeah.
But awesome, I guess, I was young and just kind of thought it was the thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you and I are like around the same age, because I saw some stuff that you did online when you were like 15, some pencil stuff, which looked really cool. And I was excited to talk to you because I've been collecting comic books off and on. I mean, I collected big time in the 80s. And I think I was born in 74. So it was 82, 83 when there's a miniseries for Magic. And it's all about her going to limbo and learning how to be a sorceress, and then she escapes and all that kind of stuff. And that was the first story, though, that I read. I stole it out of my brother's comic book collection. I went into his room and sat there and took them and went up to my room and read them. And I was enamored, And so I'm going through, and I've tried to draw. I can't draw a stick figure. Forget it. Never mind doing the stuff that you guys are doing. And when I see your stuff, I was like, this is ridiculous. How did you even begin to get into this realm where not only is there a realism to what you're presenting, but you can feel the emotion that you're exuding off the page. And I don't understand where you're getting your I guess it must come from within, where you're getting the emotion to be able to do this and then bring it out for everybody else to enjoy. So when you sit down and you're looking at something and you have, I imagine when you're going to work on a cover, they kind of tell you, do they just say, this is the story, and then you kind of take it from there? Or do they convey it, we want to have this type of thing? Or do they tell you, these are the characters you can choose from? You get the question I'm asking here?
Yeah, well, it's different all the time. Not all clients, do things the same way, so sometimes different clients might want a specific character, or I have a choice of what to do, from their storyline or what'll be okay, for that issue. Sometimes, they'll have a bit of a concept, naturally, like most people, I'm happy when I got a bit more freedom, but, it's not always the same. And I guess, anybody that's, looking to get into something like this, to expect a mix.
Yeah. When I listen to some of your other stuff, they were talking about, you've done a lot of female form,
mm-hmm.
and then you'd like to do more male. And I think and that was quite a while ago. And I think you are been doing more, because you just did King Black. What do you like about the body form, and how do you, when you sit there and you look at female or male, are you studying the body? Have you done this for a long time so that you can, because your stuff is more realistic than, like, I don't want to name any names, but some people don't understand. They're amazing artists in their own right, but then they draw the stuff and you're like, dude, they got like 80 different muscles that don't exist on them. You know what I mean? And
well, then but sometimes, people do that, and it does work with their style, and other times, not so much. So it's different for everyone. It's like that, looking back at, Frazetta's stuff. It was like, Boris was with certain, it's not point for point with everything,
right? But
in certain respects, he was more focused on the realism as a general guideline, and Frazetta got a bit more gestural,
right?
And even when anatomical, it wasn't 100%, what you'd see in reality. It still worked, if that is making any sense.
Yeah, it does make sense, because you can see that with a lot of people when they're drawing, and even though anatomically might be correct, but it does work. It's all within the frame. So,
yeah,
I mean, there's like Frank Miller's stuff that he did on the Ronin series back in the 80s. That works. And it's not 100% accurate by any stretch, but it looks amazing. Everything is square.
If it looks cool,
yeah.
If it looks cool, it looks cool.
But did you study a lot and kind of learn the form of the body to do what you're doing?
I mean, yeah, it's been a life of study, and it's also, it's not saying that simple. I'm going to say right. Not as simple as, but it's not just focus on representing reality. Like if you rendered to a T every last, inch of the human form, it might feel very busy.
Right.
So an important something that might be important to focus on, it's going to be different for everybody, but is to pick out the key points, your focal points in the image, kind of know where to fade things out or fade them into shadow, or to render a little bit less here and there, so that it's not overwhelming and it doesn't feel like just a bunch of hard lines or hard shadows or hard, highlights, things like that, where, I've talked about it before. Place where I've always struggled would be the collarbone. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually talking through this right now, and I'm realizing the reason is I often focus on the portrait. So that's right. A key point, in my art. And what you got is the portrait as a focal point, And then out from there, it tends to get less important, unless you got, hands coming up, into the center of action. So if you picture it as, detailed and then less detailed as you go down and out, the collarbone is still close by. And I always feel like I should get, the highlights in here strong, the shadows, get the shaping. And when I do that, it feels overwhelming. Like, I guess it shouldn't really be a focal point.
Right.
And I've had more success, in recent history. Just imply it, leave it simple. Don't overdo it. Don't overshade it, because, where you might be looking at the eyes on a character. Why am I distracted by the collarbone that's right there? Because it's close by and it has, some distinct shapes.
That's interesting. I couldn't even. So when you're sitting there working, you're like, I can't have this be such the focal, because you're overthinking it. And now you're just kind of simplifying it a little bit more for yourself. And you're like, oh, that looks so much better.
I start with, let me just put a simple brush stroke in to start.
Yeah.
I'll go back to it. That's what I tell myself. I'll go back to it later. Let me just indicate right now and leave it alone. And then later on, as I see that the piece is developed, I don't feel that I need to go in and then, chisel out the little dip, and then, the roundness of the bone that goes straight across. And
Right. When you're working on stuff, what do you do to relax, to take a break? Because I imagine you're hunched over, or I don't know if you're standing or you're hunched, whatever you're doing, but you're working for hours at a time, and then Shannon needs to relax. Shannon needs to get back onto a focal point. What do you do?
Relax and take a break. I haven't really thought of that before. That's a
you're
good
never
idea.
taking breaks and relaxing.
That's a good idea. I don't know. I'll find myself switching from one project to another. Typically that's the break.
Yeah.
But I guess, no, it is. I mean, we're rounding, winter up here, which is its own animal, so when the weather is nicer, we're on a big property up here, so it's nice to get out. We got woods in the back, and Becky and I, we carved our own trail through the woods. So I don't know, if it's like a quarter-mile long, but we went through and we cut out our own trail through there. So we've got a nice, on-property trail to walk through.
Oh, that's
and we
good.
try to do that, not quite as much in the winter. We've had over a foot of snow for the past, 2 months. That would be very difficult to walk through.
Are you getting good internet out there? Because how do you get your work in if you're out in the middle of
nowhere? Yeah, we got good signal.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, we didn't when we first moved in, but we did have the option to switch to another service provider that had much better internet. We were a little bit worried at first.
Yeah. Because you work from home, and so you 100% rely on that. So that would be distracting.
Yeah. What's up, Becky? Oh yeah, Becky's reminding me that we had to wait for the ground to thaw before we could switch providers.
Oh.
So we moved in the winter, and they had the cables run, and they're underground, and it's up in the mountains. So everything was frozen solid. So we had to wait some time before they could go in.
We just moved into our house in November, and we had it rhymes with Smarshmast. And and I'm not a big fan of theirs, simply because of the fees. And we switched over to this other company that has fiber optics, and it like half my cost and doubled my speed. But we had to wait like 2 months because of fiber, so they had to do the whole neighborhood to get to us, and it took 2 months to get there. But it's definitely worth the wait, Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
it's a different world.
So if you weren't working, I only know you work through comics. Are you doing other things besides comic book characters? Are you working on things for just for yourself? Well, you know what I mean?
Oh, I always try to be working on something just for myself. Otherwise, I do gaming. I've done that for a long time. So that's been constant. And as often as possible, I try to make sure I get to my own projects. Over the past 2 years, that part of it has been a little difficult to do, but I am doing that now.
Because it seemed like you were on every book last year having a variant cover. Like I swear you had to be on more than 20 books.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, that was Becky saying it was like 30. I know it was like last year I did 30 something covers.
That is nuts.
But yeah.
That is nuts. And I love seeing people of your caliber. I mean, everybody who's doing professional comic book work is amazing. I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea, but there's not a lot of people that are doing oils like you're that you've done and the digital work that you're doing. I think of Jason Alexander is doing things in your realm, and there's a couple other guys, but I love seeing it because to me, comic books and the art of comic books, from Jack Kirby and before to, you know, Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane and everybody else now, it's a fine art to me, and it should be thought of that way to me. I get frustrated when people are like, oh, they're just this, and it's like, no, this is amazing stuff that we're seeing, and it's cool to see that the stuff that you're producing. What do you think of doing your whole own book? Is that something in the cards for you, or are you very satisfied where you're at today?
Doing my own book is definitely something that I want to do. I'm hoping, that it'll be something in the near future that I'll be able to announce. But thought about it for a long time, and it is definitely something that I want to focus on.
Does that mean you have to
enjoy it a lot?
Yeah. Does that mean you have to get back into? I shouldn't say back into, because I don't know what your process is. So I don't want to. Please don't assume that. Don't think I know what I'm talking about when I'm asking on your process stuff. But does that mean you get back to like pencil and paper to draw out, like you do the cover, but then the internal stuff is always a little bit more flat, I guess I could say? And does that mean you get into more pencil paper and doing more of a traditional style of comic book, or do you take it to like what Alex Ross did with Kingdom Come, where it was just ridiculous?
Well, in its own form, I would like it to be just ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm sure
I would like it to be. I don't want to feel that, it should be less of what you'd expect from me. What I think interiors will entail is a lot more storyboarding.
Yeah.
Because it'll be, image and image and page that all need to tie together, work together. So that part of my process is going to change a bit. But I would like to do a book start to finish that feels like my work, and I would like each page to feel like an experience.
Yeah.
So if that makes sense.
Oh, no, it makes perfect sense, because I think that's what Frank Miller accomplished with The Dark Knight Returns. The first time I read that book, each page felt, just like you said, an experience. And I think if you're I don't know, man, I think if your comic book is half as good as the stuff that you've put out right now, it's going to be ridiculous. So I'm excited for you to do it. Do you think you're going to do it independent, or are you going to maybe work, or maybe you can't even talk about this because you might be in talks, and if you can't, just say I can't talk about it, and it's all good. Maybe you're working with DC or Marvel on something. Or what would you like to do?
What I would like to do is a big question mark. There's, definitely possibilities around that, trying to figure out, what the best direction is, and what, my options truly are is undecided, but we'll get there.
Yeah, you'll get there. It'll be a lot of fun. The journey is all of it, right? Getting to that point.
Yeah, it is when you look back.
Yeah.
At the time, it always feels like the destination.
It's so fun.
And yeah, it is really interesting how we function in that capacity.
Yeah.
There's like time periods, it's like, oh, I'd love to go back and, be doing that again. And it's never like the fond memories of, when I just finished up. It was when I was working on these projects and, doing this and that in between, and where I was living, and, it was my first apartment, and, you think things like that. And there's, wonderful aspects of it. But at the time when you live in it, it's, I got to start planning on retirement,
Right.
It's all focused on retirement.
I think that now I always stress out about retirement, because when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was so bad with my money, like so bad. I didn't plan on nothing. And now I'm like, I better buy some property or some houses or something.
Yeah. I try to remind myself, I'm like, well, I'm an artist, and I can't entirely picture ever, just full out retiring.
Right.
As long as I don't have to,
Right.
So if I'm physically capable, I think I'll always want to be working. Maybe having a little bit more choice,
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing, whether it's, for a client, this client, that client, my own projects, having that choice, maybe that's how I view retirement, is having more choice around what I'm working on.
I think Bernie Wrightson had that, once he got a little bit older and was able to do that, he kind of just did what he wanted to do. And he did some, his Frankenstein stuff is ridiculous. So
yeah,
I can't see why you wouldn't be able to get to that point at all. It's good stuff. Hey, why digital and not stick with traditional?
Well, it's an excellent, difficult question. I became fascinated with it early on, and it wasn't strictly about, client projects where,
right,
like, if you got changes, if they request a change, well, can you just make the background blue? And
right.
if you did it in oil paint, it's like,
no,
really? Really? And if you could just, move the character over a little bit,
right?
Really? I could just
take the oil paint and
cut my canvas, just cut it. It's moved over. There's a big hole in the middle now, but it's moved over.
You can make that spot blue.
Yeah, but I think I started just being fascinated with the technology. And when I was in college, I guess more so what I saw was the printed form of the art of these artists that I liked, and I was captivated by. That's what I knew. Yeah. So I found myself essentially doing my oil paintings, but trying to make it look like a print.
Right.
It was like I was focused on clean and smooth as possible. And maybe that was something about the digital format. And I just found it fascinating that you could do it there. So, I jumped into that. And, after that point, it's really helpful, like we just discussed, for clients. I think, usually, they'll prefer it because they can give more feedback in the middle of the piece. But I guess, like, Alex Ross, I'm sure, his clients are fully aware that once they'll approve maybe a sketch, if he even goes through that process anymore,
right.
That it's on a board or paper and it's traditional.
I always find it interesting. And I want to ask you a question, and we don't have to talk about any kind of numbers or anything like that, because I always find it interesting financially. Is there a benefit to doing digital over traditional? Because I always think of the traditional stuff especially with comic artists, having those originals that they could resell, and then when you're digital, you don't have, I don't know the concepts of, I don't understand how you can or you can't, you know what I mean? Maybe maybe you have this ability or whatever, but I'm always curious, is there a downfall on the financial side when you stick with digital over that because of that secondary market that's there?
Well, it's different for everybody, So how people work, how they make their living, lots of people, do all the shows. Some of them are selling books, some of them are selling prints, some of them are focused on originals, and some of them are, doing original commissions at the shows, so it's not exactly the same for everyone. I like having more and more originals when I can. I think it's a nice thing to have. So, I focused more on that in recent history, trying to have more original pencils that I did for a piece and stuff like that. But I'm still not actually looking to sell them. I have other work that I do that, keeps me functioning in that capacity. But yeah, it's the lifestyle for everyone. So whether they're just doing comics or they're doing other things, what they need to do or want to do. I learned about that early on because, talking to other artists when I first got into the comics and what they do, and they go to shows, and I learned about them doing commissions, and I learned about them, like they'll do a cover for this, but they also have an original, and then
right.
Maybe they have an agent or somebody that takes care of that for them. So you're going to find it's not exactly the same for everyone.
Right. It's
and I've enjoyed maybe some faster speed, like I can typically work faster digitally as opposed to traditionally, and that helped me to do a bit more covers. I still feel that I probably spend more time on my covers than the majority out there. I can't account for everybody, but I know it takes me some time to finish a cover.
That's really interesting, actually, because I always wonder how people do things. Do you know Marv Wolfman by chance?
Not off that by name.
Yeah, he was with Marvel. He was the editor of Marvel back in the 70s for a minute. And then he's done a ton of storylines and tons of stories. Like he wrote the original Dracula from Marvel, that whole Dracula series, and Tomb of Dracula, and a Wolfman by Night, a bunch of stuff. And I asked him about, I like how you answered your question because it was very informative, but I asked him about his first commission piece that he did back in like 1963. And yeah, I felt really bad after asking him. he was like, I'm not going to answer anything like that. Cause I was like, it was 50 some odd years ago. I'm sorry. It's kind of funny. Hey, what's your favorite genre to do? Do you have a favorite genre? Because you've kind of ran the gambit. I know that you've done a lot of fantasy stuff. King in Black feels much more horror in a lot of ways, especially on that cover that you did. It looked, dude, the guy looked badass. I got to tell you, it looked really, really cool. And I'm curious, you've done a lot of this. You've done a lot of fantasy. I feel like with the Venom stuff that you just did, and then King in Black, you're getting closer to horror. Is there a line there that you'd like to cross at some point to do more of this? Or do you have a genre that you're like, I haven't done this yet and I really want to do it?
I don't know. I guess, I always, not always, but like since college, I thought I wanted to do fantasy stuff. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't so much like the dragons and the knights and that kind of thing. Yeah. It was, I wanted to be able to do like grand, color schemes. I wanted to be able to get a bit surreal with my work. And, I would see that sometimes with fantasy type work. So it was a genre that I was kind of felt I was falling into. And that stuck with me for a long time. I've always had an interest in the comics, and, they could be, heavy-ended with the superheroes and stuff like that.
Yep.
And when I was a kid, I was very into, the independence and, like Elf Lord, which was fantasy, and that was a big one for me. So I guess I did have a mix of interest. I was kind of fascinated how much I enjoyed doing the superheroes and doing them in their, traditional outfits. When I'd be asked to do a cover, and it wasn't always like we want them in their, their standard outfit, I'd be like a little disappointed. I'm like, no, I want the full body suit. I want to do that. So I was really excited to do that.
Yeah.
And then I guess, I was doing that a lot. And then all of a sudden, like you said, an opportunity to introduce, a bit of the horror.
Yeah.
And like thinking that showed that I got excited about that. If I'm doing Venom, what do I want to do with Venom? I was like, I want to get in close on him. I want to see the teeth. I want to see the drool. I want, texture on the tongue. And I guess it's like, like you said, the horror end of that.
Yeah.
And that was followed by King in Black. And so then I started doing the Dracula series. We had a good laugh about my pronunciation of that, on a live stream the other day. So if it slips, it's my Long Island coming out.
It's all right. My mom's from Connecticut.
So word of warning, so Cult of Dracula.
One of them most likely to just bust out laughing.
We just had the creator of that on.
Yeah?
The writer.
Oh, yeah, Rich Davis.
Yes, Rich Davis. Yeah, he was just on the podcast.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, he was awesome.
He's wonderful. We adore him.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. He's such a good guy. Melissa talked with him. Yeah. Very cool.
Did he mention the scholarship fund that he's setting up for Amber?
Scholarship fund for Amber?
Did he mention that?
Oh, I don't
know if you mentioned it or not, because I didn't. So I started this podcast in 2017 with my partner, Johnny, but we have so many interviews now. It's crazy that we had to have 3 more people join us just to handle all the interviews. And Melissa got to talk to Rich. So I have to go back and actually listen to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of
hopefully he did promote it.
Yeah, hopefully he did. Well, we can mention it now too, If Becky, if you want to come in and tell us what the foundation and the fundraising, I'd love to put it in the show notes and everything.
Yeah, I don't really have too much information, like a name or anything. I'm right here. I'm a mess.
You're fine.
I don't really have a name or anything, but his wife passed recently, and she was really involved in theater, and she was just a huge nerd like all of us.
Yeah.
And in honor of her, he set up a scholarship fund where he wants to send 2 people to school. I believe it's for women to go into theater, like one to go into theater for the acting side and one for the technical production side
of
theater.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so he wanted to honor her memory that way, in a way that gives back to people. And that really resonated with me. And she seems so wonderful. We met Rich like right before it happened, and we were looking forward to getting to meet her. And unfortunately, that didn't get to happen. But she seems so wonderful and such a bright light. And
that's amazing.
I really loved that he did that. And so I wanted to make sure that if he didn't mention it, that I did.
Yeah, well, we'll reach out to Rich and get the actual website and all that kind of information and stick it on not only in this one, and make sure it's updated on his if it's not on there now, which I'm sure it is, because I can't see him not mentioning that.
I can't see him not, but that was just my polite way of saying I want to make sure it gets mentioned, because we really like him.
That's awesome. Cult of Dracula, it looks like such a fun thing, because he went in, he said he did all this research, and then that and he gender bended Dracula, which I thought was genius the way he did it, and then bringing in all these different historical monsters, kind of tying them in. It sounds like a fantastic. I can't wait to actually read it.
Yeah, the research on that and the descriptions, that I was able to receive for characters. I got really excited about that. And just taking, the brides alone, each one was a distinct character. They had a fascinating backstory. And I was like, I really want to portray that, and to talk to them about, representing, each one of them on their own cover. And he got excited about that, because no one was doing that at first. And I just thought that they deserved their own space, opportunity to show what he really was pushing for in the story.
Yeah, see, there you guys go. When you go to your LCS, your local comic book store, everybody listening, make sure that you want Cult of Dracula, because it's going to be some amazing stuff. It really is. Shannon's going to be on there, and Rich is going to be writing it. And now I'm super excited. I didn't know that you were working on that with him. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was the first time that I committed to, any ongoing series, to do. It's a 6-book series. So I agreed to do one, a cover for each of them.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a big commitment for me.
Really big deal.
Yeah. So, but I was excited. I really wanted to be a part of it. We were in talks for a long time, and I didn't know that my schedule was lining up for it. And then it was like, all right, we got to find a way to make this happen.
I'm excited to see these covers.
Yeah, this one was a long time coming. He reached out to us well before Cult of Dracula was picked up by Source Point Press.
Yeah,
and
love Source Point.
He had a lot of foundation, but he hadn't made it too far with actually producing the book yet.
Yeah.
But he had so much foundation whenever he reached out. We both really hated that Shannon didn't have the time to do it, because there was already so much work put into the world and the characters, and they were really appealing, and we were just really drawn to him. But we hate that this isn't working out, but we just can't right now. And so then whenever things circled back and we were able to have the opportunity to try to make it work again, we were very excited to get to do that.
That sounds awesome, man. I'm excited. Where did you guys meet, if you don't mind?
Me and Becky?
Yeah, you guys are so cute together. So I got to know.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, because...
You can take the floor on this one.
Okay. Do you want when we actually met, or do you want whenever we...
Dealer's choice. You tell me which one.
Okay, so the very first time we met was at New York Comic Con a few years before we started dating, and he doesn't remember it, which is fair, because
you probably saw thousands of people.
I was in sensory I was in sensory overload.
Yeah.
Because it was a packed day, and I went down to Artist Alley, and he was my favorite artist because I was just in love with how beautiful his colors were, how well he's able to capture the female form, just all of it. He was my favorite. And so by the time I made it to him, I was a bumbling mess that was just like, I need to get out of here and get to the Firefly panel. So that was when we first met. But then when we really, really met was we became friends on Facebook. I still don't know why I sent him a friend request, but it was kind of like, oh, it looks like he accepts friend requests from random people, so maybe he'll accept mine. And so then we became friends on Facebook, and I was married at the time. And so there was nothing romantic there. Sure. It was just, oh, my favorite artist accepted me as a friend. That's cool.
Yeah.
And then, fast forward to a few years later, and I am newly divorced, and it's Valentine's Day, and he's posting on Facebook about how he doesn't have any plans for Valentine's Day. So I decided to
get more wordy,
grow a spine and be like, hey, I hear you don't have any plans. And
that's amazing.
So then from there, a week or two later, we were on our first date.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Becky took the train into New York City, the big city, because I was living there at the time.
Gamble on both your guys' part.
Yeah, it was interesting. And it was funny because I was still living with my ex-husband at the time. We're still good friends. Like we have a kid together. We got married when we were really young. You know, we just kind of grew apart romantically, but we still care about each other. He's a good person. So, I was still living there at the time. And so it's funny because he drove me to the train station. Like the first time I was going to meet Shannon's family, I was taking the ferry to Long Island, and he was racing me to the ferry to go meet Shannon's family. Is funny. But yeah, so it was definitely different. People, a lot of his friends and family were like, wait, she still lives with her ex-husband. You might not want to do that. You might want to steer clear of that. And, it wasn't like that. He was, if you want to be with your ex-husband, you'll be with your ex-husband. If you want to be with me, you'll be with me. Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So your question was, where did we first meet?
Exactly.
Hey, you told me to answer. Would you like me
No,
to
it's fine. It's fine.
I can just go.
No, it's fun. It's good stuff. I love it. Are you helping Shannon on his day-to-day now with his business and everything?
Yeah. That would be an understatement of it. Yes. I tried to take care of everything that I can, so all he has to focus on is art.
Well, I know a lot of artists when they start out, they have to do everything. But once you get to a certain level, it's impossible, because I imagine he must get inundated with requests.
Yes. And it's really difficult sometimes because it's, everybody wants to work with Shannon, which is completely understandable, but sometimes I can't give them an answer.
Yeah.
And I don't want to tell them no. And it's like, well, if you need an answer right now, it's going to be no. But if you can wait, we can maybe figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that sneaks up on you. Cause I feel, sometimes okay, I can't right now, but I'd like to, we can do it later on. We can do it later on. And then they follow up again. And I'm like, oh, not quite yet. And then, they follow up later on. And before I know it, all of a sudden it's like, no, it is later on. It's time to say, okay. And then I find that, it could be a few of them at the same time that I can't put off anymore. And then my schedule gets overwhelmed.
Yeah. So it's good to have Becky in your life.
Yeah.
We all need a Becky in our life, keeping that stuff organized and in order.
That's the big board, the big calendar.
Oh yeah. We have a giant 12-month dry erase calendar on one of our walls, because that's just the only way to keep it all straight out, because we'd schedule stuff so far in advance it'd get hard to keep track of it all. Something like that. Yeah. It's gigantic.
If you're that busy, I imagine doing commissions just isn't in the cards for people, for you.
Oh, no commissions.
Yeah. That's all. To me, I love that for you, because that means I don't know who is calling me on my Google Voice number and why is it coming across my phone. I love that, because that means you're being very much successful, like Eric Powell. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he does Hillbilly. He did The Goon, and he has his own Albatross Press. He's an amazing artist, and he's a really cool guy. He came on and we talked for like an hour and a half, and we were like, we got to get off the phone because we'll be on here for 2 hours or 3 hours if we don't now. And he's the same way. He's so busy. He can't do commissions. And I always feel like when you get to that point where you just don't need to do commissions anymore, it's almost like you're there.
Yeah. I just want to point out there, back where we were before, it's different for everybody. So some people commissions might be great for, no matter how, successful they are, it could work with their setup where maybe they work really quickly. Maybe they enjoy it. Maybe they're doing, digital all the time and they just love getting to the pencils, So I just want to point out it's going to be different for everybody. Yeah. And it's not a telltale of anything. Like I tried, I was doing some remarks, early on, or what I've referred to as my second round of doing comics. And it was like, it was really difficult with my schedule. And I'm like, okay, I'll do them. And I thought, it was going to be like 8 of them, tops. And then next thing I know is I get like, okay, we need 30 of these. I'm like, 30? So, that was rough for me because I wasn't in love with working with the markers for so long like that, doing that many of them. Yeah. So there's reasons why I kind of veered away from doing that.
Yeah. Well, Shannon, Becky, we've been on for an hour.
Oh, okay.
It went quick. Can you believe it?
Wow.
Yeah.
I got to tell you right now.
That's a good sign.
That is a good sign. When you're like, what? Wait, what? Shannon, I got to tell you, I honestly didn't know, I didn't know what to expect. You know what I mean? I knew that you did amazing art, but I watched some interviews today. That was the first time I actually heard you speak. So you never know what you're going to get when it comes to podcasts and stuff. You have been awesome. And this has been a lot of fun. And I hope I can convince you to come back sometime, especially after Cult of Dracula is done. I'm hoping maybe we can go through each cover and talk about it.
that would be fun because I think they put a lot into creating that. And like I said, I really wanted to try to portray and do their characters justice. Yeah. And I'd be really happy to talk about
cool. That would be cool.
His characters.
What would be cool is if we could do that with Rich.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Okay. We can ask Rich. I'll have Jeff reach out to Rich and see if he's down, and then I'll have him coordinate with the three of us. Because that would be a lot of fun if you guys are okay with that. Because one of the things we like to do, we do a commentary track where we get creators and pull out their book and literally go page by page and go over what they're talking about. And it'd be interesting to do it with covers, and it's fun because you'll get some insights that you're not ready. We did if you're interested in hearing anything like that, I would suggest the one I did with Stephen Frank. Stephen Frank was the animation supervisor of the Iron Giant, the movie.
Oh, I loved that.
Oh yeah. He was the animation supervisor. He has a set of books called Silver, which is set in Dracula's castle. And it's a grift. So it's like Ocean's 11 inside Dracula's castle. It's awesome. And there's 3 volumes to the book, to the set, and it's really good. And we did volume, I think we did issue 6, I think it's his favorite issue. So that's the one we did. And we went line for line and we went through it and talked with Stephen Frank, and it was amazing. And now he's got a new one out called, what is it called? Nah, it doesn't matter. You can look him up and you'll see it.
I'm still stuck on Iron Giant. That was a big favorite of mine for some time.
He's doing What If right now for Marvel for the Disney Channel.
Oh, really? Okay.
He's finishing that up, so that's going to be amazing. But yeah, if you're interested in doing one of those, and I think it'd be fun to do it with like pick out 10 of your covers and maybe do that, or do Cult of Dracula, and then maybe later on we can do something else, because you're a blast, dude. I'm not kidding. You're a blast.
Yeah, that would definitely be fun.
I mostly like because you called me out on shit for questions that were like, well, actually.
Well, okay. Well, to be fair, on the other end of things, since you bring that up, I wanted to say that you did ask a lot of different questions. I was hearing stuff from Shannon that I have never heard before.
Oh, cool. So I pride myself on that.
Yeah, so very, very early on, I was hearing different stuff. I am exhausted. I thought I was going to pass out as soon as I wasn't needed anymore. So the fact that I'm still awake and I was actively listening,
awesome.
It was holding my attention even though I'm exhausted. So that's saying something.
I got to tell you, that's one of my favorite things to hear is when I ask questions that other people don't ask. Because what I do is I go through and I listen. And I always try to find things that, they almost asked the right question because that piqued his interest. And then he said something and then they didn't follow up, because they have a list. And if you notice, I don't have a list because I want to know Shannon. I don't, he's an amazing artist. We all know that, you know what I mean? And we can go through and that's great, but I want to know him, that's because he's the one who makes the art and that's what's fun. So
you don't want to know what makes him tick.
I know it makes me ticked off. But no, that's funny because Shannon and I will sit there and we'll watch when people will do interviews and stuff with like Todd McFarlane and stuff, and they will interrupt him and stop him from what he's saying and move on to a different question. It's like, what are you doing? You have Todd McFarlane, just let him talk.
Yep.
And so like, it's funny. So like, it sounds like you were watching interviews and you're like, wait, that piqued his interest. Why didn't you follow up on that? And so I'm appreciating that because we'll watch interviews and we'll be like, why didn't you? Why?
Yeah, I love watching McFarlane, interviewed. And I got a lot of appreciation for it because it's not just watching him go on a big show and then, he talks in depth about stuff. It's anytime he goes on, it could be with anybody, no matter what size creator they are. It looks like he puts the same amount of passion and excitement into telling his stories, and he's told it before and you kind of expect him to glance over, I did, with such and such, but he'd get enthusiastic and talk about the details behind it, and you expect him to be a busy man. And it's like a lot of respect for that. I was really, really happy to see that. Yeah.
McFarlane is awesome. I wish he's a bucket list item. You know what I mean? Like we've reached out to him so many times and we've had some big people on. We got Tommy Chong on, we had Robert Wool on. I don't know if you know who Robert Wool is.
I am not familiar.
You ever see Batman? The 1989 Batman with Michael Keaton. He plays Knox. Yeah. He plays. And he had his own TV show called Arliss on HBO, which was like my favorite TV show of all time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and he's on a bunch of stuff. And we had Chad Stahelski, the director of all the John Wick movies on. So we've had some good people on, and I'm like, I want to get Tommy McFarlane on.
And you've had Eastman on, haven't you? I believe you've had Kevin Eastman on.
Yes, we had Kevin Eastman on, and we've had.
So it's like once you've got Kevin Eastman, then it's like, okay, I'm now qualified to approach Todd McFarlane.
Yep.
And it's reasonable. So
but
hopefully you get a response back.
Your crown jewel was Shannon Maer, right?
That's right.
Okay.
We had this guy named Shannon Maer. It was amazing. I mean, Shannon was cool, but he brought this special guest with him and she just stole the show. So I don't know.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, Eric Larson was a fun talk.
Oh yeah, I bet.
He's this, and at the time he was very, I always like talking with people that are brutally honest, Like if I ask,
yeah, sure.
if I ask a stupid question tell me. You know what I mean? I like that. So it's been a lot of fun. I honestly though, guys, you guys have been great, and I can't wait. As soon as we get off, I'm gonna call Jeff and have him set something up with us and Rich, because that would be too much fun.
I think that will be awesome. Yeah, he's about to wrap up his last cover for that series. So yeah, it's.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to add it to my pull list tonight.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to let you go, let you relax, get your night going, and thank you so much. I really much appreciate you.
All right, it was a lot of fun. Thank you again, and everybody out there listening.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Spaghetti. And we're back.
That's right. We are back. Back in the saddle again. Well, I hope you guys really, really enjoyed that as much as we did making it for you. And if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, you got to go check out spoilerverse.com, because at spoilerverse.com, we have a plethora, amazing directors and artists of all walks of life, and editors and writers, and oh my God, are you a lover of comic books like we are? Then there's so many amazing people from the comic book world over at spoilerverse.com, and I highly implore you to go there and check it out.
Yeah, and while you're there, you can check out all the other podcasts on our network, like Bridges and Geekdoms and Funny Book Forensics and Haphazard Adventures and Nerds from the Crypt and so many more.
Misery
we put out
Point Radio.
episodes all the time. Go check all of them out, and check out all of the reviews and previews and articles we have going up every single day for you, every day on spoilerverse.com for you to check out and to read and to love and to like and to comment. We have a store link. If you want to help support the site, you can do it two ways. One, go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/spoilercountry, or go to our store link in the middle of the site there and get a t-shirt, a face mask, a hoodie, something, look fly as hell, and help support the site when you do that, because we get $1 or $2. And, maybe you want to talk to us. If you do, you can do it obviously on all the socials, but if you go to scpod.us/discord, you can join our public Discord server and come chat with us all day long.
I couldn't say it better myself, dude.
There you go.
You just mouthed out a ton of information at once, and really, I hope you guys enjoy what you're hearing, because we're working our butts off to bring it to you.
We are.
I guess there's only one left thing. Yeah, I'm gonna go with it. There's only one thing left to do.
What's that?
In oceans of podcasts,
We are Cthulhu.
as Cthulhu compels you to
Spaghetti. Open the mind.
and read more.
Spaghetti.